All right. So you guys now know how to add to a variable. Subtracting is the same way. Minus equals 5. Multiplication at armor times equals 5. You get the gist of it. So I believe divide equals 5 is viable. So let's see. So that's how you would call a def from outside of the class. So this is calling the def inside of the class by just putting it in the code. Calls the setup when we run initialize. Very simple, very easy stuff. So let's go ahead and go into ifs. Ifs, one of the most useful things in them is comparators, which I think I messed up here. So this is a comparator. So equals would normally be setting a number to or setting a variable to a value. This is a comparator. So this sets the this checks to see if these two are equal. So if whatever's in plating is the same as the word steel, that's what allows that to happen. So that's a comparator. Very important, very useful. Another part of the comparator would be the exclamation mark here. So this is the opposite. Instead of saying equals, we're saying it is not equal. It is not the same. So we're saying if the plating is not steel, then the armor equals 5. Of course, that's not what we want. So we do equals equals steel. So it's good to know the comparators. Those are the two big ones that you'll probably use the most. So another way to write this, by the way, if you ever see it, is there's shorthands in Ruby, very useful. We could say if, wait, no, I think it's, let's see, so at plating equals steel, question mark. So that's saying, that's the same thing as an if right here. And then after that, we type in what we want to have happen at armor equals 5. And then we can have an else, which would just be the colon. Normally, I don't think you need that. Sometimes I run into errors if I don't have like something after. Sort of forget nil. That's it. Null, nil. Sometimes each language has their own different way of doing these things. Anyways, so if the plating equals steel, the armor equals 5. Otherwise, nothing happens. So sometimes it gets mad if I don't have this little colon here, and that says otherwise or else. So it would be the same thing as typing else here and doing at armor equals 2. So as you can see, at plating equals steel, armor equals 5, else. So else armor at armor equals 2. So this is the same thing as this now. This else is saying if it is not steel, it's going to be armor equals 2. So that brings us to another thing called the else if. It's very similar in the conditional branching, where if you want the that little checkbox at the bottom, you click that and it gives you an if and an else. It's the same thing. So else if at plating equals diamond. So now we are saying if the plating equals diamond, the armor equals 3. And the number of sensors allowed could be less. So number of sensors equals 2. Otherwise, the armor equals 2. So we could also make this a little bit different to armor equals, or number of sensors equals 2. Or 3. Yeah, 3. So let's say normally the number of sensors would be 5 and the armor would be 2 if you don't pick steel or diamond. Otherwise, the number of sensors and armor changes depending on the type you pass through. So anyways, let's see, set up number of sensors at plating equals steel, armor equals 5. Okay. So this here is the same, or was the same thing as this. Now it's a little bit more complex, so this doesn't really apply. So the else if, this is important. The if checks to see if what's happening here is true or not. So we spoke about booleans. In order for this to work, everything needs to be sort of a boolean. There needs to be either true or false returned. So anytime you put something in an if, it needs to be a boolean. It needs to be able to be true or false. So if you look at an if, the code inside or like right after an if, it needs to be, you need to be able to say true or false. So if the plating equals steel, true, then this happens. False, then the else would happen. I'm going to throw an else in there. I messed that one up. Anyways, so else if is the saying if it is not this, we're going to check something else. And if that's true, then this stuff's going to happen. And then finally, else says if nothing that just happened back here is true, then we're going to go ahead and just do this. It's a nice fallback. It's good to have the else. It's better to be specific in coding language always, but having the else is a good fallback. So let's see, number of sensors equals 5. So we have a pretty simple thing going here. So this doesn't seem too bad. We have sort of a code started. So we can always call upgrade. We can set the direction facing. By the way, having direction facing as a writer class is just silly. Manipulating it through reader would probably be the best way. Writer. So power mode can always be changed outside, and direction facing can only be changed manually. So we would want to set a default facing, probably in setup. So the default facing would probably be north. So we do direction facing equals north. So you're not going to see this in a lot of the code. So I think a better way to convert that would be to sort of go with cardinal directions. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, in the directions of there's this weird setup. Anyways, they have it as 2 is north, 4 is east, 8 is south, and no, 2, 4, 6 is south, and 8 is west. So it's good to just kind of remember that. If you ever get the chance, the best way to do any kind of programming is with numbers. So the more likely, the more you use numbers as information, or the more you can convert information into numbers, the better you'll be able to do programming and design programs. So in this case, north would be 2. I'm guessing northwest would be 1. So the direction facing equals 2. So we just kind of have to remember 2 is north, 4 is east, etc., etc. Just that's how they're doing it here. This is how we should do it as well. So yeah, it's these numbers are a lot faster and they're a lot easier to be read by the computer. So that's why we're using that. Oh, yeah, I should probably scoot closer to the mic. Anyways, so, all right, number of sensors equals 5, if plating equals steel armor. So it's all set up. The define upgrade setup initialize. So let's change the way the direction facing works. So north is pressed, and then direction dot direction facing, we forgot our at direction facing equals 2. So this is another one that we can call whenever the north key is pressed. So def, or the up key, east is pressed. Well, right is pressed, but anyways, direction facing equals 4, and south is pressed. Direction facing equals 6, and somewhere down the line in the tutorial I'll show you how to southwest is pressed. I'll show you guys how to reference the key pressing, but for now we're gonna go with this. So key pressing, if I'm not mistaken, is somewhere in game system. I'd have to double check. So somewhere in this here game setup is the keys, the key manager, and you can plug in keys and register key presses in order to be able to manipulate this. So anyways, we can set up now that it changes. Let's say if we had a graphic assigned to this, we would make the graphic the north facing graphic. Right now we don't have a graphic, so we're not really worried about it. So as you can see, this is how it works. Thunderbot, Firebot, those are all on the side. We have a whole bunch of defs. So we're gonna set up we're eventually going to set up a whole bunch of defs, just like these have a whole bunch of them right here. So let's see, def setup, def initialize, else armor. So we have a bunch of armor stuff, little things like that. We know how to do an if statement and a conditional. So we're gonna go ahead and make a little bit more complex of an if statement. So let's say if, or wait, we're gonna start learning, shoot, I forgot the names. Conditionals? I think they're called conditionals. Yeah, conditionals. So at armor, nah, this isn't for setup. Let's do something else. Def super upgrade. So we're going to go ahead and do a check at basic if at armor is greater than 10. All right, so this is one of the different conditionals or conditions. So and is a condition. And means that both what I have here and what comes after need to be true in order for it to all be true. So if number of sensors equals 5. This, by the way, is another comparator, the greater than sign. It's great for numbers. It can read some other information. It just reads it in a way that you kind of have to go through some coding to understand. So sometimes it can read the length of strings and stuff like that. As long as you can convert to numbers, or the information can be converted to numbers, these should work. So that would be greater than, less than or equal to, and greater than or equal to. And those are some extra comparators along with the not equals. So this, by the way, is a comment. So this allows us to not have, like, the program won't read the code if it's after one of these pound signs or hashtag signs. So if you add one of those, this won't be read. It won't be read by the code, and you can put anything in here. So these are the different comparators, as well as this one. So these are the different comparators you'll use, by the way. So very useful, good to have. If at armor greater than 10 and number of